The wind howled across the empty plains like a restless ghost, rattling the loose shutters of Caleb Turner's weather-beaten ranch house. Out here, miles from the nearest town, silence had a way of pressing into a man's bones, until it felt heavier than any burden he could carry. Caleb stood at the edge of his porch, his worn boots planted in the dust, staring at the horizon as if he expected something, or someone, to appear. But nothing ever did. He hadn't always been this way. There was a time when laughter had filled this land, when the sound of a woman's voice drifted through open windows, soft and warm like a summer breeze. But that life had been taken from him years ago, stolen in a cruel twist of fate that left his heart hollow and his spirit broken. Since then, Caleb had become a man of routine and silence. Wake before dawn. Feed the horses. Mend fences. Work until exhaustion replaced thought. Feel nothing. That was how he survived. Until the letter came. It arrived folded and dusty, carried by a traveling courier who barely lingered long enough to hand it over. Caleb almost didn't open it. He hadn't expected anything from anyone in years. But something, some flicker of curiosity or perhaps loneliness, made him break the seal. It was brief. A bride has been arranged for you. She will arrive within the week. Caleb stared at the words, his brow tightening. A bride? He hadn't requested one. He hadn't wanted one. Who would send such a thing? And why now? For a long time, he stood there, the paper trembling slightly in his rough hands. Then, with a bitter scoff, he crumpled it halfway. This is a mistake, he muttered. But he didn't throw it away. Because deep down, beneath the layers of grief and isolation, something stirred, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself in years. Hope. And that scared him more than anything. The wagon arrived on a gray afternoon. Caleb saw it from a distance, cutting through the open land like a slow-moving shadow. He felt his chest tighten, his instincts urging him to turn away, to ignore it, to pretend none of this was happening. But his feet wouldn't move. The wagon creaked to a halt in front of his house. A thin, nervous-looking driver climbed down, tipping his hat awkwardly. "Mr. Turner?" he asked. Caleb nodded stiffly. The driver hesitated, then gestured toward the back of the wagon. She's yours now." Caleb frowned. "What does that mean?" But the man didn't answer. Instead, he hurried off, climbing back into the wagon and driving away as if he couldn't leave fast enough. A strange unease settled over Caleb as he turned his gaze to the wagon's rear. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, a figure emerged. She stepped down carefully, her movements hesitant, almost fragile. Her dress was simple, slightly worn from travel, and her hands clutched a small bundle of belongings. But it wasn't her appearance that struck Caleb. It was her eyes. They held something he recognized instantly. Loneliness. "Are you Caleb Turner?" she asked softly. Her voice was gentle, but there was a tremor beneath it, as if she wasn't sure she was welcome. Caleb cleared his throat. "Yeah." She nodded, lowering her gaze. "My name is Eliza." Silence stretched between them. Caleb didn't know what to say. He hadn't prepared for this, not really. He had imagined someone bold, perhaps desperate, maybe even demanding. But this woman. She looked like someone who had been forgotten long before she ever arrived. "You weren't expecting me," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. Caleb exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "No. I wasn't." Another pause. Then she nodded, as if she had expected that answer too. "I can leave," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you don't want me here." Something about the way she said it, so calm, so accepting, hit Caleb harder than he expected. Like she had been told those words before. Many times. He looked at her more closely then. Really looked. And for the first time in years, something shifted inside him. "No," he said, more firmly than he intended. "You can stay." Eliza blinked, surprised. "Are you sure?" Caleb hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Yeah," he said. "You've come all this way. Least I can do is offer you a place." It wasn't much. But to Eliza, it meant everything. The first few days were awkward. Caleb kept his distance, unsure how to share a space he had grown used to keeping empty. Eliza moved quietly, careful not to disrupt his routines, as if she were afraid of being sent away at any moment. They spoke little. But something was changing. It started small. Eliza cleaned the house, not out of obligation, but with care. She opened windows that had long been shut, letting sunlight pour into corners Caleb had forgotten existed. She cooked simple meals, warm and comforting, filling the air with scents that stirred memories Caleb had tried to bury. And she listened. Even when Caleb said nothing. Especially then. One evening, after a long day, Caleb returned to find the porch lit by a soft lantern glow. Eliza sat there, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked up as he approached. "You work too hard," she said gently. Caleb shrugged. "It's what needs doing." She studied him for a moment. "Or maybe it's what keeps you from thinking." The words caught him off guard. No one had ever said that to him before. He frowned. "You don't know me." Eliza didn't argue. She simply nodded. "You're right," she said. "But I know what it looks like, when someone is trying not to feel." Caleb fell silent. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, unexpectedly, he sat down beside her. It was the first time he had chosen to be near her. Days turned into weeks. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, Caleb began to change. He found himself talking more, sharing small things at first, then deeper ones. He told her about the ranch, about the struggles, about the life he once had. About the wife he had lost. Eliza listened without judgment, her presence steady and warm. And in return, she began to open up too. She told him about her past, a life where she had always been overlooked, passed over, considered not enough. A woman no one had chosen, until now. "I wasn't sent here because someone wanted me," she admitted one night. "I was sent because no one else did." Caleb felt something twist in his chest. For the first time, he realized the truth. She hadn't come to him as a blessing. She had been discarded. And yet, she had brought light into his darkest places. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds rolled in, swallowing the sky, and the wind turned fierce and unforgiving. Caleb had seen storms before, but this one felt different. Dangerous. By nightfall, the ranch was in chaos. Fences snapped, animals scattered, and the barn roof threatened to tear away. Caleb rushed into the storm, battling the wind as he tried to secure what he could. "Eliza, stay inside," he shouted. But she didn't listen. She followed him. Through the rain. Through the fear. Together, they fought to save the ranch, his home, his life. At one point, a beam collapsed, nearly trapping Caleb beneath it. But Eliza was there, pulling him free with a strength he hadn't expected. "Why would you come out here?" he demanded, breathless. She met his gaze, her eyes fierce. "Because you're not alone," she said. The words hit him like lightning. Not alone. For so long, he had believed that solitude was his fate. But in that moment, standing in the storm beside a woman who refused to leave him, he realized he had been wrong. By morning, the storm had passed. The ranch was battered, but standing. And so were they. Exhausted, Caleb sank onto the porch steps. Eliza sat beside him, her clothes damp, her face tired, but her spirit unbroken. He looked at her, really looked at her. Not as a stranger. Not as an obligation. But as the person who had walked into his empty life, and filled it with something he thought he had lost forever. "You didn't just save the ranch," he said quietly. Eliza frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Caleb's voice softened. "You saved me." Tears welled in her eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Caleb reached for her hand, hesitant at first, then certain. "I thought you were a mistake," he admitted. "Something sent to the wrong place." Eliza's breath caught. "But I was wrong," he continued. "You came here for a reason." He squeezed her hand gently. "To rewrite my life." A tear slipped down Eliza's cheek, but this time, it wasn't from sadness. It was from something she had never truly known before. Belonging. The wind had quieted. The sky cleared. And for the first time in years, Caleb Turner didn't look at the horizon with emptiness. He looked at it with hope. Because sometimes, the people the world forgets are the very ones who change everything. And sometimes, destiny doesn't arrive the way we expect. It arrives quietly. In the form of someone who refuses to give up on us. Even when we've already given up on ourselves.